Welcome to the Chronically Well podcast, where we hold real conversations with community that need to be heard. On today's episode, I have the lovely honor to speaking with Amanda. Amanda is someone that I've communicated with in the DOC diabetic online community for quite some time now. And I've always told her that one day we would have this conversation, we would record together. Amanda, I thank you for joining with me. I know back in October, we also had some issues with technology, and I apologize for that on my behalf. Amanda was one of the original spokesperson or guests on the Diabetes Looks Like Who Representation Matters 2023 campaign. I know that we weren't able to get that out there in the space, but I'm glad that you were able to come with me today on this journey, which is the Chronically Well podcast. Amanda, before we get started, can you just give our audience, our viewers, our listeners, a quick summary of who you are?
Like you said, I'm Amanda. I am 29. I'm a behavioral technician. I work with kids with autism, and I'm a dancer as well. I feel like that's about it. I don't really like talking about myself, and I'm kind of nervous, so.
That's fine. I promise you, within the first couple minutes, the nerves will all go away, because that's what I do. That's part of my craft, the mastery. I don't know if you can feel that vibe already, but that's what I do. In the DOC diabetic online community, I'm a big people person. Growing up, my dad says I was a big people person, but over the years, a lot of that have subsided, where I'm more so like into family, into the things of that nature. Like, I really don't worry too much about the outside world, as long as at home everything is in line, and things like that. But again, I've been wanting to have this conversation with you, really just to sit down and chill and communicate, because I can see your authenticity, and I know that you have some things that are inside you that you've been wanting to bring out for quite some time. And hopefully in this space that I can give you the opportunity to be unapologetically yourself. Because for real, I know that I have things that I feel as though only I know about, or only I can speak them into existence. But sometimes we need people to help pull that out of us. People that are there to not only sympathize with us, but empathize with us. Give us that pat on the back, that rub on the shoulders, that, yeah, girl, go ahead and do you. Keep on going. Keep it coming. Because, if you can't be unapologetically yourself, then what else can you be? It's all about you today. All right. So when whoever's listening to this, and Amanda, and you may know her as this quiet person, just know today we're going to amplify who she is, because you need to know who she is. She is not only a person living with type 1 diabetes, but she is a human. She's a spirit. She is a beam of light that needs to be shined in all communities. So again, thank you for joining me, Amanda.
Thank you.
You said that you're a behavior technician with people with autism.
Yeah.
So I have a great understanding of behavior technicians and people that work with persons with autism. My oldest son, he's actually on the autistic spectrum. So just from I guess just seeing him every day in his movements and things, people don't see him as anything or anyone of difference or indifferent. But we have learned as he's grown and developed that there were he needed extra resources and things just to be on the same playing field as other children his age. Even as far back as him being 2 years old, but now he's older. Um, we're making sure that we align him with the resources so that he can continue his growth and development as he becomes a teen, adult, go on to live his own life as a human being should. So I'm very appreciative of people that are able to work in that capacity, because if it weren't for people like you and the gift that you give to society, give to the world, then a lot of the things that when we were growing up, when we were younger, weren't normalized, would not be normalized today. So yeah, thank you for that. And how did you get into that field?
Um, I was originally doing legal work. I was a paralegal. But everything else I've done in my life has always been working with children. So I found myself looking for employment again. And they actually reached out to me, a couple of companies did, and I just decided to roll with it, to give it a try. And I've been doing it for a couple of months now. I actually really, really, really love it. I think it's like you said, building that community and having people see them as normal people, right? I hate the term normal. And so all it is just building on the skill set that they already have. And I love the idea of giving back to the community and anyone who's differently abled, and just being someone that they can lean on and grow with and grow from. And so it's been really rewarding. Every case is different, but at the end of the day, it's the same. You're making a beautiful impact.
Impact and influence means so much, especially on young and the older, because not often are they given the opportunity to just be themselves. And you're able to, or people who work in the field that you work in, are able to help them develop and pull the things that they already know they have in their back. Like they have it in this big back, this sack on their back, and they're now able to just keep on pulling from it and showcasing to, society, like the gifts that they have. We all come from different backgrounds, different education. We all have different resources, but once someone is able to help us develop and pull that out of us, we're able to actually be the person that we truly are. And you said you've only been doing this for a few months, and it's very rewarding. Now, does that coincide with your own experience growing up? Like, at times, did you ever notice any indifferences in yourself, or if you had like any educators, teachers, paras that actually helped you along in your life?
Help me? No. But, one of the main things I've always spoken to you about was always being the only diabetic that I knew. So in that sense, like what I do now, we will have group sessions, we have individualized sessions, and I love that because diabetes and autism, yes, they're different, but I never had that. I was the only diabetic in my family, still am. Didn't really have diabetic friends. The only other people I knew that dealt with diabetes were my doctors. And they weren't even diabetic, they just studied it. So it's nice to see different things being normalized and coming out, and people having that support system. And so for me, I'm like, oh, like even with the podcast, it's like, this is a really great thing. Like we need this. A lot of this for me is very cathartic because it really has just been me. So it plays on it in that sense of just being a different person with different abilities. Sorry, that's the incense.
Oh, I can't see them.
Oh, sorry, the smoke was in the camera. Having different abilities and not having a great support system as far as community goes.
Right. Because I know myself, being what they consider a minority in the world we live in, especially in the US, and being part of different marginalized or disenfranchised groups, such as, I mean, like you said, a person living with diabetes and growing up with it as you did. I know that that also correlates with you and what you're doing now in work, because these children growing up with autism or not even knowing that they may have autism or be on a spectrum, you growing up having diabetes, not knowing anyone else that had it, um, it may equally have made you at times feel as though like not only that you were the only one, but no one understood you. Like you mentioned your medical team. They were the doctors, but how could they truly understand you as a person if they weren't either managing someone like a toddler, watching them grow with diabetes and understanding that, or if they weren't living through the experience of having it?
Yeah. I had one doctor. One doctor, his name was Dave. He was diagnosed at 2. And so he was the only one that was like able to understand. But then even with having him on my team, sometimes it became a comparison, right? Of like, oh well, you were diagnosed older than him. Like you should have it a little bit more under control. Like look at his numbers and he's doing great for his life. And it was like, okay, what should have started out as support is now like snowballing into the opposite.
Right. We can't compare and contrast one health condition to another. That's even in the realms of like type 1 and type 2. Chronic health is chronic health. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. So just because he had his experience, his education, the resources, the guidance that he had, doesn't mean that you had that. You may have just known that. I know myself. I only knew that I had diabetes. I knew nothing else.
Yeah.
For many years, I didn't even know there was a difference between type 1 and type 2. I just knew diabetes in general. And that meant, oh, okay, stay away from sugar. I mean, that's what we heard our people tell us,
Yeah.
especially if you grow up in a community, a black or brown community, you hear those things and you hear them often. People question why you have diabetes. How'd you get diabetes? Who are the cause for you having that diabetes? When in reality, just like that doctor should have known, you have diabetes, he has diabetes. It's not equally the same. And the way it affects us mentally is not the same. So for him, like to say you got it when you were older as compared to him getting it when he was younger, he should not have said that. He should not have compared his own experience to yours because you don't know his background. So you're not judging him on his background. And once if he was able to learn you as the person, he would truly understand why you personally had the experience and the thoughts that you had.
Yeah. A big part of that was me not wanting to be diabetic, right? Like not wanting to deal with it,
Right.
a whole avoidance issue, which caused a whole nother set of health conditions. Which is also why I thought it was really important to do this because I never really speak about it. But all you ever hear are the horror stories of diabetes. And so when I was diagnosed, that's all I had. There
Right.
was a guy who lived in the community who grew so tired of taking his injections and everything that he just gave up. So he slowly let himself die. Then the other person with amputations and blah, blah, blah. So all you have are these horror stories. And I wanted nothing to do with it. Nothing to
I,
do with it.
I feel you. I mean, and to not wanting anything to do with it also can mean like avoiding diabetes and all. Like we may not mentally say to ourselves like we're not caring for ourselves or our well-being, but it almost becomes innate, like natural. Like when you see so many hardships, even in life, like say like you grew up in a household with a ton of siblings, a single mother, like many people have, and just to see like hardships occur, you try to do everything you can to avoid that. And many times that doesn't include like, okay, I'm going to get this education, I'm going to meet with these groups or whatever. You're just trying to stay away from it. Just the avoidance of it because it just knowing that it's there and it's capable of grabbing you in, pulling you in, and you becoming a part of it in general, it alters your mindset. So like you just being able, like you seeing someone who was struggling with diabetes and you saw the complications of it in general as a young person, you're like, I just need to avoid that. And avoiding that means like just just like how you would avoid a sinkhole. You walk around it and keep on like go about your business and do something else, right? Like I mean, growing up young with diabetes, even older, we do that. We have to try to avoid some things because it will affect us mentally, but not knowing in the long run how that will also affect us physically.
I regret my high school experience. I mean, I was diagnosed on the onset of going to high school, and that was tough. I had 14 years, 13 and a half years of like again, normal life. And so a week after I turned 14, it was like, "Whoop, you're now diabetic," you know? Um, I missed my first 2 weeks of high school because they didn't have a school nurse who can handle it. So I wasn't allowed in the building. So by the time I started, I was already behind. Um, Back then, you still had to go to the nurse for your insulin and things like that, or at least stored in the fridge. And so again, going back to being the only diabetic, right? Like I didn't want to go downstairs and take my insulin. I didn't want to do that. Why would I want to do that? Why would I want to
Right.
stand out so much, especially as a person who is shy and doesn't like to be the center of attention? Now it's like, oh, she has to go downstairs and take her insulin. Let's wait for her before we go to the cafeteria. I don't even eat school lunch. What am I going to cover for? I stood 4 days in the hospital, and then it was like, okay, go and deal with it. Like, yes, I had a great team because I did, but there's not a lot of like, well, back then there wasn't a lot of ongoing support.
Yeah, that's something I fight for especially in our communities. I fight for upon diagnosis, there should be therapeutic measures put in place, especially today when we know, when our parents were growing up and everything, there wasn't so much of a focus on mental health and mental well-being. That's why there are many struggles that still exist today. Um, but we know today that we must equally treat our mental health as we do our physical health and well-being. You can't have one without the other. There's no way a person can say they're 100% focused and physically fit and everything with so much pain and trauma that they have not had the experience of any therapeutic measures in remedying that. There's absolutely no way, and there's no way that someone could be all happy and giddy and feel like amazingly about everything mentally when physically, like your body is breaking down. So like, and I don't know how today we don't have those shared resources when we know that trauma, being diagnosed with diabetes, living with diabetes, being a child at 14 years old, being removed from a classroom to go to a nurse. There's so many steps of trauma that are there. You got the diagnosis. You got the initial like questioning, like why? Why is it me? Why am I going through this? You have your parents or siblings questioning and asking how did my child get this? How did my sibling get this? Is it going to occur to me? You have, once you enter the school building and back, everyone's wondering, where were you at? You've
Yeah.
been gone for 4 days. So many questions to someone like yourself who who's shy. I'm not going to say timid, but shy, and it may have built on a high anxiety now. There's so many therapeutic measures that should have been put in place. Now you got kids asking, where's Amanda at in school? And they're sharing that with everyone around the school now. So now when you hop in the building, people who you've never even had conversations with are probably asking, what's wrong with you? What's that? You got diabetes? And on top of that, you're getting called down to the nurse's office, separated from your class. Upon diagnosis, especially for someone in those adolescent, young teen years, our families, our parents are, for the most part, unfamiliar with things such as 504 plans, IEP plans, things that are needed, we know are needed today, just so that you as a child living with any kind of health or educational related disability can be somewhere near or reaching the equitable measures of education that other kids are reaching. It's so much trauma that's involved in that. Because I'm now picturing you at the nurse's office and you already or probably don't want to give injections.
Yep.
I don't know if the nurse was assisting you or the nurse just expected you from day one to know what you were doing.
She expected me to know what I was doing. And this is why I say I regret the choices that I made, because sometimes I would skip it. I would skip it. My mother would not get a call. My mother would not. I would skip it. So, of course, I was running high. And I think by 15 or 16, they were like, oh, you are starting to have protein in your urine. Now you need to be on kidney medication. And I'm like, well, like, here we can go, all the horror stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, I take accountability, but then another side, another part of me is like, and where was the school? Like I was 14. Where was the school? She was in charge, but she wasn't in charge. So I feel like a little more intervention, a little more effort would have gone a long way, because I'm not a stubborn person. So had she really been like, you need to do this, I would have been like, oh, fine. And again, like you were saying, like all of therapy, the IEPs, all of that, I had none of it. So of course, again, it's not normalized. So everybody's like, oh my God, what is that? Oh, she wasn't here for the first 2 weeks. Oh, now she's hospitalized. Oh, now, so nothing is explained. They're not used to this, but then the burden of explaining it is on me. And so, oh, go down, you need to do your answer. Oh, no, I don't. I'm fine. And nobody else is none the wiser.
Not at all.
And so that's just how it went. And now I'm what? Yeah, I'm 29. I'm on kidney medication for the rest of my life.
Being 14 years old and diagnosed, and now you said at 15, 16, you're spilling protein in your urine, basic kidney infections. Between those two years, so much education was missed when it could have been so like just little small tidbits that were added into your everyday journey or life as a person living with diabetes. There could have easily, instead of you walking into a school and everyone asking you about it, you were out for 4 days. There could have been a direct meeting, assembly, anything where they're not even talking about you having diabetes, where they're just talking about health and knowing that some people do get diabetes and diabetes is not a bad thing. It just means that this person has an added thing that they must do daily just to help manage them both mentally and their physical well-being, and that if if during their journey in school and education, if they need some help, some guided resources from whether it's peers, educational staff, the nurses, that you are learning here today so that you will be able to help them. because we know like they have assemblies about everything, and most of them we don't remember.
Yeah.
But sometimes in life, as we grow older, we always get like a ticker in our head, like something that someone told us previously. Like it pops up, and you're like, "Oh yeah, that's what I need to do." So if they had that assembly, not saying that you were the person with diabetes, those kids would have been more welcoming to you entering, and they would have known not to do this, not to do start the finger pointing, and you as well entering would have been more welcome. You would have been it may have even opened you up more at that time to being able to check your blood sugars, give yourself insulin. So there's so much that was missed, too much that was missed. And I'm going to let you know right here today, Amanda, that is no fault of your own. You were a child. We know, I know growing up in my own household that I was forced to grow up fast. Um, but at the same time, when we look at someone today, a 13, 14-year-old today, we know that they're still a kid. We know that mentally they're not fully developed. So we must also look at a 13, 14-year-old 15, 16 years ago and know that they too were a child. They too weren't fully physically or mentally developed. And that even an adult, if someone's diagnosed at 20, 21 years old, diabetes isn't something that we just know. It's not. But it would have been easier for the adults that were supposed to be in your corner if they were to learn more about it. If they were able to learn more about it, they would have been equally able to share with you some of the necessary measures so that you can be at your best today. And I hope by people listening and fully understanding your story, your journey, your path, that whether it's friends, family members, adults that were in your life growing up, even adults that are charged with taking care of children today, they understand that we cannot, as adults, tell these kids like, you got this, you handle that, because you're not going to give them you're not going to give them the codes to your banking account. You're not going to. Living with diabetes is a lot.
Yeah.
You don't want them raising an infant at 13 years old,
And
living with
that's
diabetes.
my school nurse was absolutely handing out birth control, double shot. But dealing with diabetes, she knew nothing about it. It was just your insulin that's in the fridge. Are you going to take it? Or come down and take it? No? Okay. She didn't know what a blood sugar was. They just needed someone there who could oversee what I was doing it.
Right.
And for nothing, for no intervention at all.
She was just the person with the drugs.
Yeah.
Did you always, you said you went to the nurse's office and took insulin, but you didn't eat school lunch.
Yeah.
How did that go?
It didn't go well because on top of that, sometimes I would skip it. And again, this was early on in my diagnosis, so I was often running high. They were trying to find the right carb ratio and everything like that. Not wanting to do the finger stick, so sometimes I just went by like the sliding scale. If I was gonna eat or if I brought something to eat, then I would just like help with food. So I was missing whatever my sugar was. And she was just like none the wiser. Like really, she was just there to hold my insulin in the fridge. That was about it.
Right. Did she ever like seek you out, like when you skipped?
Not really. sometimes it was like in the very beginning, it was like, oh, you have to take the insulin. And then I would be like, I'm not eating today. And she would be like, okay. Not like, oh, did you check your sugar? What's your sugar? Would you have to cover for your sugar? Just like, okay, you're not eating. Okay.
Right. So she just thought insulin meant sugar,
Hmm.
not knowing the stress, the adrenaline, all of those things, being a young lady, the hormone and fluctuations. She didn't even put all of those, like, even, she didn't consider any of those things. That's just wild to me. I mean, I know today, like, I don't want anyone touching my diabetes except for me. Like, I don't think it's an option, really. Like, it's me personally, but at that age where you're just learning it, it's better if y'all were to have learned it together. If she would have took the time, because I'm pretty sure, well, I take it, it's high school, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if people were just going to the nurse's office just to go sometimes, because I know I did that. Sometimes I went there just to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Like I complained, like my stomach's hurting, and she's like, "Go lay down." Next thing I know, it's 3 hours later.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are some good times. Look, I mean, high school was, I don't know, to me, like some people, high school was like this big, like party, like they loved it, enjoyed it. To me, it was, I mean, I have some close friends that I'm still close to this day. But other than that, like high school to me was like a blah, like, I
Yeah.
don't know. I could have went without it.
Yeah, that's how I feel. But I feel like it was again clouded by the diagnosis and
Hmm.
everything that followed after that.
Right.
Because I do feel like with better management, I probably would have been a lot happier and a lot more secure.
Hmm.
Um, but those were the times, so I can't go back and change that.
Right. We can only move forward with what we know today. And I mean, you probably didn't even understand like how stress was affecting you in diabetes. Like,
No.
I know personally, I didn't really understand stress and diabetes until I started wearing a continuous glucose monitor. Like so many things, I was like, this is really affecting me. So yeah, it's too much. And you just had, on top of that, you had the regular high school routine that you had to do, like testing,
Like, why
um,
do no one talk about that?
like how
Why, like, why does no one talk about that? Do you know how stressful high school is?
in general.
Okay, and then the one thing my doctors told me was try not to be too emotional. That's how they were forewarning me that, like, our stress levels affect
Mhm.
our sugar. So I'm like, okay, be a robot.
Right. And today, I'm a person with living with diabetes. Um, Sometimes I can't control them.
Right. So then I'm like, okay, well, now I have to like really set my emotions back. And then that was the next thing. People were like, you're so like, I don't know, like there's no emotion. And I'm just like, yeah,
The,
doing great for my diabetes. Like it
yeah,
was just so much.
the adults that were supposed to help you along and guide you along this journey were training you to be something other than yourself because they didn't want to have to deal with the emotions.
Yeah.
So instead, they were blanketing them.
Yeah. They told me try not to be so emotional. They told me not to date. They definitely told me not to date. I remember that. I was sitting in a hospital and they were like, try not to date. Boys will stress you out. Don't let boys stress you out. Your blood
See,
sugar matters more. And I was like,
see, if we were going to the same high school, I would have had a problem with them telling you that.
yep. I was like,
Uh,
wow, okay.
yeah,
So I
that's
really used to say that to boys. They like, I can't date. Like,
look,
I really, but
and
you're
you
gonna
didn't even give
stress
them
me
a
out.
reason, probably, right?
Yeah.
Just you couldn't do it. Now, when you were after diagnosis and going back to high school, were you even given like any kind of educational plan, like a 504 plan, IEP, things that would have helped you, like because just being sitting in a classroom, if your blood sugars are spiking, like if you have a roller coaster of blood sugars going on in the classroom, we know that sometimes we need to take time away to check our blood sugar, to give ourselves insulin, um, just to breathe, as they said, because the emotional stresses that were occurring because you were a person living with diabetes in high school, they should have took it upon themselves to know that, okay, Amanda needs some kind of insurance so that she can be at her best. Like, I remember being in 11th grade having to do like this big essay in English class, like 20 pages. Like, and I'm thinking now, like, would you have been able to do that? Like, when you're faced with a new onset of diabetes, you have everything else that's occurring within the high school. How could they think that you could perform at that same level at all times?
Yeah, I feel like, and I think it's not just centered around high school. I think people in general, especially with the diagnosis of diabetes, people who don't have it, they tend to do the most in the worst way you get it. So, like, again, there was no intervention for actually helping me. But then when it came to looking at me as like someone who was ill and disabled and with all this pity, there it was. Like, oh, she's so different. She can live a normal life. But then it's like, at the same token, you go do whatever you need to do. There's no actual help. Like, you'll be fine. You got this. It doesn't make sense to me, but I also feel like I can't carry that because, again,
Right,
you learn with the time.
right. And now today in the work that you're doing, you know that you can't look at people in that same way that they looked at you as a person who's ill, someone who's not able to care for themselves, because you know that given the resources that you are able to, I mean, how was it like for your family? Did they understand diabetes at all? Do they even understand it today?
They understand it today, but back then, no. And that's like another really big burden that I really want the world to understand. And a part of me is like, I will never forgive you for the trauma you put on my family. There's like no intervention at all. Like my mom, she's very like full of anxiety, and so she's very sensitive. I've always hated needles. She hates needles. Like, I mean, I used to have panic attacks, throw up and cry when I used to get blood drawn. So to then have to start with the needles because you weren't given a pump right away. And she's mom. I'm 14. They're telling her like you need to learn how to do this. It just threw the entire family for a loop. And then they would question like, oh, why her, the one who's the most afraid of needles? So my mom went through the thing of where like she didn't feel strong enough to do it for me. So she was like, how the hell am I going to help her? And she would have these conversations with the doctors, and they would just be like, oh, you're strong. You got this. And she has to learn as well. And so it's like, yeah, like I really just took over. I mean, and rightfully so. I'm 14, I'm in high school. I'm going to be alone most of the time. But again, there was no like, hey, sisters, brother, how are you feeling about this? Like, don't pay attention to the horror stories. Your sister's not going to die in 2 years. Like, this isn't that kind of deal. It was just like, wow, your family's coming to the hospital and like literally sobbing over your bed. Great support system, but what can we really do? There was no continuous education. There was no like, oh, you should go to therapy, or like we have a diabetic therapist. Again, during the hospital stay, you had your social worker and things like that. But afterwards, it was just like, okay, upon appointment, how's everyone feeling? Okay, and then eventually that stops too. And it just becomes about the numbers.
Becomes, I mean, it's even like that today. We know with endocrinologists, diabetes educators. It's more so about the numbers, unless there are people that live with it. Because, like you said, at 14 years old, your family seeing this young, like their baby basically hospitalized with the illness that they know limited about, other than, like you said, you saw a person in your neighborhood that you wanted to avoid, and they're thinking like, is this the inevitable?
Yeah,
Is this going to happen? Because I know my family, even many people that have spoken to, like they deem that as the inevitable, the complications, because like they may have been told that after a certain amount of time, this happens and it's nothing you can do about it. You just got to do whatever you can to stay alive.
yeah. Like your life is limited at this point, extra limited, right? Because we're always on borrowed time. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's looked at as that, like, oh, she's really a ticking time bomb right now. So enjoy these little moments while you can. But it's not inevitable. I mean,
Not at
now
all.
we know that more than ever. But it's not inevitable. And then again, there's two sides to every coin. So I feel like the other side is that when bad things do happen, or like di- diabetes then causes something else, you get looked at as like the bad diabetic patient. Like, what weren't you doing that you should have been doing? But like, it's really your fault. Like, I feel like a lot of times there's not a good medium when it comes to diabetes at all.
Right. And today we can say that, or today, do your family like see you and know that things are better for you today than they were upon your diagnosis? Because I know for many families, like if you were diagnosed young and now today you're 100% managing, and you're managing in a different style, they may look like, what is going on now? Like you're a different person. Like
Yeah,
you got a CGM, you have a pump, like how?
yeah. It's far better now. And it took a lot for me to make the decision to wear the pumps and everything. I was against it, I'll say, for a little while, but yeah, the family sees that it's like, it's not what it was. Again, it was like lack of information, lack of resources. You're not gonna die just because you're diabetic. Now I'm just like annoying them all the time. And I'm like putting the
Di-
sensor in front of them and like freaking them out.
Diabetes here, diabetes there, diabetes
Yeah, like
everywhere.
yeah, like, oh look, there's a Lancet over there. Like it just makes sense at this point.
Right there,
But,
everywhere. We can't avoid that. I blame that on the diet gods. I feel like they come through at night and just sprinkle them here, sprinkle them
yeah,
there. Like, I mean, it is what it is. It's like
absolutely.
it's like finding a little piece of paper on the floor or anything. Like it's always there. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm glad that today you yourself have taken it upon yourself to normalize what it is living with diabetes, because like I said, your family upon your onset probably saw a whole different outlook, a whole different perspective of what was going to occur. And now you're changing the course of that. So like you said that you're the only one in your family with type 1 diabetes. Now they know today, like if anyone else was diagnosed, Amanda is our go-to person.
yeah,
And hopefully no one else in your family ever gets diagnosed. Look, even if it's on me, no one else in this world would ever get diagnosed, because I would not wish diabetes, especially the diabetes that I live with, that I know, type 1 diabetes, on anyone. I wouldn't wish any chronic health condition on anyone, because that means we're managing nonstop.
yeah,
The It fully engulfs us, like mentally, and that's something like most people, 90, I would say 98 to 99% of people not living with it do not understand how just looking at your phone at a glucose number affects you mentally. Changing sites if you wear insulin pumps or CGMs affects you mentally. Just every aspect of living with it, not knowing when your supplies are going to come in. having to contact customer service is the absolute worst for me because, like you said, we're all on borrowed time. So 50 years or whatever from now, if I'm on my deathbed, I want to know who's going to give me back that time
Yeah,
because so much of it has been wasted in trying to just live. Like, if we add up all the time, like on average, when I speak to people, they're like, on average, when I have to call customer service, that's probably about 45 minutes. How many, and just think about how many times you do that per year. And when you're at the end of your life, all of that time that you could have to be able to just speak to your loved ones, just to share insight, um, give them any valuable knowledge through your own lived experience, just to just be there, just so they can embrace you. Like no one is giving that time back. And that's something that affects a lot of people mentally.
absolutely. I remember, I think it was maybe a year and a half ago at most, the pharmacy from around here didn't want to give me my insulin when I was still doing the pens. They were trying to withhold the insulin because they said they needed a renewed script. So my mother had to go up there and she cursed them out. And she was like, my daughter's not gonna like end up in the hospital or die because if you think she just magically didn't become diabetic overnight. Like you sent the message out on a Friday at 3 in the afternoon. You think the doctors are gonna respond? If
Right.
you know she's diabetic and she needs this constantly, why didn't you send that little message out beforehand?
Why wasn't it top priority?
And so he ended up giving it. He gave it to her, and he was like, "Well, if that script isn't here by like Tuesday, I'm gonna have to call insurance." And she was like, "Oh, you do what you have to do. Like you can't withhold insulin. That's ridiculous." But they gave it to me. Um, but it's instances like that where it triggers me so much because it just makes me realize like how little control we actually have. You know, because at that point I was in there. If they didn't
Right.
want to pass over that pen,
What would have
what were you gonna
happened?
do? She wasn't gonna jump behind the counter. She would have went to jail.
Look, she would have pulled a John Q because look, I tell everyone in this community because I tell people to reach out to me if you need any resources, whether it's pump supplies, insulin, or whatever. Because on my watch, no one's going to go without. And I know a lot of people are like, well, I have to focus on my own health, my own well being, so I can't really think about other people. But that has helped me a lot in the stages of like burnout because I know that I'm not the only one going through this. So yeah, your mom, she put on that cape, and she probably look as you still today as her little baby.
Yeah,
She probably has a nickname for you, everything, and she's probably the only one that's allowed to still call you that because I know my parents have one for me. And she's like, that's my baby. And she's at the counter. You're not there with her, but she's still holding you and embracing you in her arms. Like, you going to give me what my daughter needs. It's
yeah,
almost like, if you were taking formula as an infant,
yeah,
if you need that formula, they have to give it to you. Except for this formula that is insulin, you can't temporarily take another type of formula so that you can be well. Like, like, okay, today we're going to just give her a little bit of whole milk. um, you
it
know,
should be fine.
right. It happens often. But your mom knew that you needed insulin. So she was your advocate, your adversary. She was that shining light that needed to be shined right there during that time. She broke through the walls and was like, whatever y'all going to do to me, do it to me.
Yeah, I was like, do not jump over the counter. Like that's not gonna solve anything. And she's like, well, I'm not leaving here until they give it to me. I'm like,
Right.
oh my god. So they even pulled the line like, can't she go to the emergency room? And she looked at them. She was like, really?
When you have it right here.
Yeah, it was fully like right there waiting in the bag already. And they were like, we just need the renewed script. And she was like, I'm not leaving until she gets it. Absolutely not. And so he gave it to her. Like all of that to give it to me in the end. Yes, I'm thankful, but just give it to me. You know, on Monday
Hmm.
you're gonna get the script.
Right. Give
You
it
know,
to
like
me.
you would really want that on your conscience.
Yeah. Worry about that later on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your mom did something on that day that probably helped people in the future. So now they know to prioritize certain things.
Yeah.
They know that they can give it and worry about the consequences or whatever later.
Yep.
Because I mean, you're giving someone life, like literally. That's
Literally.
that's life in a vial.
Hmm.
Mhm. And
Yep.
you said that you were on pens before. Did you just recently make a change in technology?
Yeah. So the first pump I had was the mini med, the Medtronic
Medtronic.
tube. Um, I did that for a couple of years, and then I was like, oh, I'm tired of always being tethered to something, like, and again, these machines cause attention. So I was just like, oh,
I
I'm tired of
understand
it.
sensory.
Yeah. I scarred pretty badly. And then at one point I noticed I really was slipping up because I got very like lazy with it, I'll say, where it's like I didn't want to change the site and things like that. So I went back to the pens for another couple of years. And then I got tired of the pens because, the constant injections,
Mhm.
the two types of insulin, which I think is what really did it for me. And that whole scenario where he was like, I'm not gonna give her the pen. I was like, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. So I started with the sensor. I put the sensor on, and then a month later, I was like, okay, let me do the pump. And um, it's been it's been great. I will say, as far as like blood sugar, but I've been always in range for the last couple of years. My A1C has been like 6.4. So as far as in range, it didn't make much of a difference, but for my anxiety, it did. And then it gave me a different set of anxiety. You know,
I know.
the walking around with it, the questions, it being bulky. But I'm comfortable to an extent. I will say I wish it was a little smaller, but I also think the world needs to adjust. And that's just that. One thing that made it hard was dancing because my instructor, oh God, my instructor, every time she sees the sensor and she sees the pump, she has to make a comment. So I haven't danced in months. She has to make a comment about how it's big, about how it's bulky, about how it's not sexy, about how, like
What's
how we
sexy?
manage.
Who tells who what's sexy? It's not on the eye of the instructor to say if something's sexy. Like seriously, it's not on her. It's on the people who are actually watching and paying attention because there could be a whole nother group of people who just want to feel normalized in having any type of chronic health condition. And by seeing someone else that's managing, living, thriving, doing what they do normally, it can help them.
Yep. And so it's like me personally, I struggle with those thoughts myself.
Mhm.
So to have someone else out there confirm it, especially in a vulnerable state, I'm shy. So me dancing is me coming out of my shell and I'm learning something. So again, extra vulnerable. And then you're sitting here like, yeah, no, that looks crazy. She's like, you have like 50 patches on. And I'm like, it's two. Like it's two.
Mhm.
Um, so I met a couple of years ago, I met another diabetic dancer. And so I was telling him because I was like so frustrated. It's like every time I show up, you have to like ostracize me. Like, really, this is what we're doing. So he was like, give me her Instagram so I can like blast her because she's being ableist. And I was just like, I don't want to take it there. Um, but sometimes I'm like, yeah, like you kind of deserve it in a
Mhm.
sense because you're being ableist, like you make me feel like I don't want to show up. Why is
Well,
that fair?
Amanda, you know me in this space. I'm going to tell you, representation matters. So if you want to slide me this person's information, I have multiple phone numbers, multiple accounts that I can reach, and it will not direct back to you. Um, for real, because that's one thing that I truly hate. People who don't know, thinking that they know something, and then by their own prejudices towards it, they alter the person who just is like trying to stay well,
Yeah,
just trying to be their best. And you couldn't be your best without the things that you have. Some people have other things. Some people may wear glasses. Some people may have hearing aids. Some people may wear medical alert bracelets or whatever. Some people may have to take anxiety pill before performing. Some people may suffer from like overtly sweating, where they need to take something to subdue that. You're managing something that's nonstop again, and you're doing the best that you can and just being who you are. So, in no way, just like I said about the kids in school, the school nurse, anyone out in the community, they're all going to have their perceptions of everything. But knowing how the media fluctuates, we know that if one person is given an opportunity to be authentically, unapologetically themselves, other people will tune in and listen. Because we know even more recently, having seen more people with type 1 diabetes and their continuous glucose monitors, their pumps, omnipods, everything across media, it's normal. It's helping normalize living with diabetes. Even if at times these people don't look like us,
yeah,
aren't doing the regular day-to-day things we're doing, but it helps if your instructor is able to see you and correlate that with a Super Bowl ad that was placed last year, and now she's like, okay, I understand. Instead, people are still not taking the time out to understand us when they say they want to be there for us. They want to help us thrive and be our best. But the only way you can do that is actually just sometimes just backing off and letting the person breathe.
yeah. I just also feel like maybe it's me. I'm just not the type of person, but I also don't feel like why do you feel the need to say that? Like I would never see someone out on the street and be like, oh, why'd you wear that? Whether it's a shirt I don't like or it's a medical device. I'm
Right.
never gonna be like, why? 50 patches. That's not sexy. Who's gonna want to look at you? Like I would never talk to someone like that, you know?
Hmm.
And so I have multiple chronic conditions. So she's always like, oh, I'm here for you, you don't have to go through anything alone. And I'm like, you see the way you talk to me when I show up? Like
Hmm.
I don't need you here for me.
Right. She tries to sympathize instead of empathizing.
Yeah. No,
And
I'm good.
are they like this with other things? Have you noticed this?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is just who she is as a person. So in a
Hmm.
sense I didn't take it personally. But at the end of the day, like that's still not a comment that needs to be made, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Although it inspired me to want to open my own studio for people who look like me. So
Mhm.
I thank her for that because I think that's a whole nother career I want to go into.
And we're gonna make that happen. Right?
Yep.
If that's truly what you want to do,
Yeah.
we'll make that happen. Put it out into the air. put it out into the space, and hopefully you'll get the grants, awards to do that, because I mean, it'll be original.
Yeah,
Originality is what sells today.
I really hope so. I mean, I believe so. I know I'll get there.
You'll get there. Now you said she was your instructor in dance. What type of dance?
Can I really say it?
You can say yes.
Yeah, pole dancing. So we did pole, we did floor, we did like chair. We even I used to do fitness with her and everything. So it's, like a wide range of things.
Mhm.
But, when you're not respected, sometimes you just have to stop.
Why would you ask if you're allowed to say that?
Oh, I don't know, because, like some people be like, oh, pole dancing, like you're, all the labels.
Look, an athlete is an athlete. A cheerleader is an athlete, right? If you Wouldn't you say consider yourself athletically inclined by doing pole dancing, chair dancing, all of those things, in all realms of athleticism, or forms of entertainment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, in this day and age, I don't know how anyone could look at you or anyone else indifferent, because it's normal to be you. Like, for people to, I really hate when people question and ask you why you do this, why do you, like, and then people look at it a certain way. I'm like, it disgusts me. Like, like, I mean, love you, love the things that you do, truly.
Yeah.
Um, or do you do it as just or do you do it as a profession, or do you do it as just instructional?
Um,
I don't
so
look.
it's
You're smiling, and that's making me smile. But I just want to get to know you as a person. These are real conversations with community members that need to be heard,
so
and
I
you
was just
and
it's okay.
you will open the gates for other people.
Yeah. It's a funny story, I guess I'll say. But I was interested in it from a very young age. Sounds really bad. But I had graduated college and I decided to put me first. And I was like, I'm gonna finally take a class. So I bought like the class package um very early on. I knew like I want to do this professionally. Like I will be a stripper, I will be an instructor, I will have a studio. Um and so obviously so far I've only just been in the studio. But for now it's still like a hobby. But again, now it's more of another career sector for me.
Look, another source of income.
Yeah.
Look, it's not all about just getting the bag. It's about enjoying the journey on getting the bag, so that you can make that bag even bigger. like, like seriously. And how long have you been doing that?
Since 2019, so
20.
a couple of years.
Okay. Okay. But you've never ever done it professionally?
No, I'm still very much in my bubble.
Okay. But you've done it in front of a bunch of women.
Yeah. And then,
Okay.
like wearing the device is a whole different thing to tackle,
Mhm.
especially with hearing that comment. So it was like, it's very layered for me.
Mhm. So, like on Instagram, like sometimes you'll get people come across your feed and you're like, how do they relate to me? Because normally it's like whatever you follow, you get.
Yeah.
So, I know I've shared with you in the past, like there are so many different pole dancers with diabetes and that wear gadgets. And when someone initially reached out to me and was like, because I posted something like, "What would you like to see?" And they were like, "More dancers with diabetes." And I'm like, "What kind of dancers?" And they were like, "Pole dancers." And I just did a quick search, and so many were popping up, and I'm like sending them like, here they go, like, and they're like, "How did you find this?" So the other day, what's today? Wednesday. So on like Monday, someone pops up as a suggested person for me to follow. So I click on it, and I'm going to have to mute this out. But do you want to know what their screen name was?
What?
Diabetic. Word on everything. If
What?
you look, word on everything. If you search for it, you're gonna see it. And I was like, I thought it was just like a play on words or something. So
Right.
I click on it, and it's actually a porn star who has diabetes, and she wears her medical devices. She has her Omnipod, or no, not Omnipod. She has her Dexcom. She has a tube pump, and she has like these photos of her at like, I don't know what they're called, like award shows, like porn star award shows and
Yeah.
stuff. And I was like, wow, like, but I said that's what she want to do. Let her do it. She's normal.
Representation matters.
Representation
Absolutely.
matters, and she's normalizing being a diabetic.
It's a brand.
It's her brain. Like that's what I said. I said I'm pretty sure if someone were to Google it,
She's gonna pop up.
right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, as a person living with diabetes, you do want to see more people capable or able to do other things. Like for years, we weren't able to be pilots, weren't able to have CDL licenses, weren't able to work in law enforcement, still not able to be in the military. Like
Mhm.
there's a diabetic head pilot now. Um, there's diabetics that work in law enforcement, diabetics with CDL licenses. So we know that people like the barriers do need to be broken through.
Yeah. I actually kind of love that she's a porn star. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. I love that.
And you're gonna Google her,
I love it because that again, that's like a self-esteem issue that I
and
struggle with.
it's empowerment,
Yeah, so it's like, okay, like, yeah, you can wear your devices and be sexy. Call that.
right?
Like, you're still attractive.
Yep. I mean, seriously, if you can have people in the gym, bodybuilders working out, showing everything, why can't you equally have someone who's engaged in whatever profession they want or they enjoy, like with a smile on her face? Why can't Amanda be who she wants to be while sliding down the pole, going up the pole, doing chair dances, whatever? For real, we're gonna speak that into existence.
Yeah, I don't
All right.
know. But it's
Oh.
interesting as far as like wearing the monitors go,
Mhm.
because I don't know if you've seen the commercials for like, I don't remember the specific brand, but there are certain weight loss companies that are now giving out sensors.
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, this is where we should have been years ago. I'm appreciative we're here anyway, but it's not still so normalized that nobody makes a stupid comment. But it's interesting, you have these weight loss companies, these weight loss journey places that are giving sensors to track how your body reacts to certain foods in order to help you lose weight.
Right. Hopefully that will
But
normalize what it is wearing, but at the same time, we know how hard at times it is for us to get the devices we need.
yeah,
Even Dexcom just released, got FDA approval last week for their for continuous glucose monitors called Stilo. It looks identical to the Dexcom G7, but it doesn't have G7 on it. It has a different type of design on it, and it's over the counter. And it's supposed to be 50% less than the sensors that we use. The big difference is that it does not have low alerts, because the only reason we have low alerts is because we use insulin.
yeah,
Insulin is what makes our blood sugar go down. The only thing really, um, other than like if we have insulin on board and we're doing activity. But yeah, so it's just to monitor. Some people just want like a fitness tracker. I can see like athletes knowing at when they or at their peak performance or conditioning. So originally my thought was, how am I going to find my people now?
yeah,
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 like, because I know when I'm out in the public, like in the past, I didn't tell anyone about diabetes. I went maybe 16, 17 years without telling anyone about diabetes. Um, but today Like when I see someone out, as long as they look like it's okay for me to approach them because I'm not going to force myself upon anyone.
Yeah.
Like if I introduce myself to them and I'm like, oh, you got a continuous glucose monitor. I do also, and I have an insulin pump, and we have that conversation that can continue and go. But now knowing that Dexcom is having one that looks very similar to the sensors that the majority of us wear, it's like, dang, now I can't even approach a person. They're like, no, I'm not a diabetic. I'm just doing
I
this.
meant,
I'm wearing
yeah.
this because, because there's so many stigmas that are still placed upon us living with diabetes,
Mhm.
even 15, 20 years later. Yeah. Growing up, did you have like did you say you went to college? Did you have a career path or that you wanted?
Absolutely. I studied criminal justice and sociology.
Mhm.
So I originally wanted to do FBI. I wanted to be a criminal psychologist. And I was just like, this is so much. But I mean, like to this day, I'm still very passionate about it. I think in a perfect world, I would be able to do it still. But it just really it became a lot, especially dealing with like multiple chronic illnesses. It became a lot. And so um I started college late, right? Um, so I didn't graduate until I was 20 something. And I went and I looked at the criteria for like what I wanted to be. And I was like, you had to be in the field by 30 and you had to have like really good credentials by then. You needed like your JD, your doctorate on top of your master's. And I was like, No offense to me and to anyone else who wants to try. But by that age, I was like, yeah, I can't do all of that. Like, I can't do all of that back to back to back to back. You know, you needed to have the experience as well as the education. And I was like, that's not happening. Like, I always
Yeah.
tell people, I started my adult life very late because of all the illnesses,
Mhm.
but I'm here. I'm still happy with what I do.
Right.
So
Did you enjoy your time like like doing college and everything?
I loved it.
You
I
loved
loved it.
you loved it, and
Honestly, if I could go back, I would. Like, I've been itching to go back for my master's. I just like school. I do
dude,
really well with school.
education is a forever ongoing thing. Like it never ever ends. Like as long as as long as it's something you enjoy, and the government decides to pick it up and pay for it, then do it because it should not be coming out of our pockets
No,
at all. Just like, and especially like if you're a person that's managing multiple chronic health conditions as you or as I am also, we should be gifted that opportunity, especially when we consider going back to when you were 14 years old, those years that were taken from you
yeah,
in education because they weren't giving you the resources and the guidance that was needed. Like that need to be put in a plan for today. Like I need that back. I need everything that y'all owe me. Like seriously.
because in reality, we are old.
Look,
We're old. We're old a
oh,
lot.
we're look, first I thought you said old. I said, don't call me old.
No,
Old, yes, 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 yes. That we are owed a lot. Yeah, so many things that were taken from us, and nothing was put in place to better us.
yeah,
Like we were given insulin that costs X amount of dollars to stay alive. Like, and I understand why. There are people who decide, like, I don't want this burden of diabetes, of any other chronic health condition. And that's an individual thing. Like me, like I've worked in art and trauma therapy for many years. I also work as an educator in media literacy with kids who at an alternative school setting. And I understand the traumas that people endure on a regular, even from my own lived experience going through so much trauma, like the majority of my entire life. And to know how living with chronic health conditions on top of that, it's like someone out there, there's someone out there who's living with a chronic health condition that is having to manage all of these things, and they're at a status, at a celebrity status, and they need to speak up more about it, because just our government stating things like there need to be caps on insulin and all that, that does not help me for real. I mean, knowing that they're trying to put caps on it, but I still shouldn't, even if it goes down to $35, I should not have to pay that.
Yeah.
I should not have to pay to live, just like I shouldn't have to pay to die.
We didn't ask for this.
Right. Not at all.
And I have a friend who lives in Florida, and he has to pay out of pocket for his insulin. So his doctor does him the solid of like, I'm forgetting the term, but basically she puts it in bulk. Yeah, she writes the prescription for more than he needs, so that way he can get it all in one shot, and always have extra left over.
Do you know what type of insulin this friend? Do you know what type of insulin he uses?
No, but I can ask.
Okay, we can talk about that off air, because if I have the resources, he has the resources, and I'm going to help him get to where he needs to be. Like personally, I don't pay for insulin, and I try to teach and show everyone else how they can do that also. Like, so if anyone needs any resources, I'm the guy, and I would never shut my door on anyone, because there were times when I didn't have, where I went days wondering how am I going to get the next bit of insulin, where I was rationing insulin, not knowing that that can equal to death. I didn't know that at that time. I just knew that, okay, they say I need insulin to live. Just like other people need other medications to live. But to know that, I did not know that, oh, okay, if I go a day or two without insulin, that meant death. That was another thing that was skipped during my own education.
Yeah.
I did want to circle back to, you said you went to school for sociology and criminology. Is that what you criminal justice? Okay, criminal justice. Are you into like criminal, or how do I describe it? I listen to podcasts, true crime.
Love it.
I absolutely love true crime. Like
I wake up.
Like
I wake up and I put it on.
That is my thing. Like true crime podcasts, I fall asleep to them.
Yeah.
Like seriously, every night. Like, so if you ever want to start a true crime podcast, I would love to hear it. Even if we just open up and just have an open conversation about it, like I would love to do that, because like, I don't know, but it's a true passion of mine.
Yes, I love it. My sisters and I joke about that. Like, I will literally wake up bright and early and have my coffee, relaxing and watching criminal shows. Go to sleep to the same criminal shows. Like,
right, that was me.
It's a romantic comedy or something.
That was me and my brother growing up. Me and my brother growing up would also watch criminal shows nonstop. He still does. I don't do too much of the shows anymore, because unless it's like a documentary or something that I don't know much about. But like, I listen to true crime podcasts, and I'm going to share with you later on off air, like my favorite ones, because like I can't go without them. Like seriously,
I have to watch at least one criminal show a day, and it's always the documentaries. Very big on investigation discovery. That channel, love it.
Investigation Discovery.
Yeah.
Look, you put a plug in there. You said that you don't have diabetes at all in your family.
So, on the onset of it, we were like, oh my God, I'm the only one. And then it's like as we continue to dig and look through family history, there's been at least one other case. I think it's really like two other cases.
Hmm.
So I think in total, at most, like it's three of us. One who has passed. And in her case, she wasn't taking insulin and she used to eat all of the candy in the world.
Is that
So,
maternal or paternal?
maternal.
Maternal, your mom's side.
Yeah.
Have more people on her side, like even your siblings, have any of them like been tested to see if they have any of the auto antibodies?
Um, I believe both of my sisters were considered borderline at some point, but I think it was more for type 2.
Hmm. Okay. Just knowing you said at least three people in your family history. When doctors say borderline, I'm always like, what do you mean by borderline? Like borderline, like I'm going to get it, or borderline, like I'm not going to get it. So, and when they say borderline, that means that they truly don't know what type they're on a border for. So if they are able to go through like TrialNet, trialnet.org, where you can get actually free testing done, where they will send you a blood testing kit, and you being the CSI person, you may enjoy this. You may enjoy this. You may document it. It could be the first episode of your podcast. You can actually do the lab withdrawals at home, put in a tube, send it back, and they'll contact you and let you know if you have any of the auto antibodies that will lead to type 1 diabetes. So with that, it can help you delay the onset by they have different clinical drugs like teplizumab or Tzield that actually slows down the onset of type 1 diabetes. And the number one thing that it does is that it gives you the opportunity to learn more about it, to watch for the signs, to avoid things such as DKA, because we know we don't want DKA.
Oh, gosh.
You said,
I can actually still remember what DKA feels like. Like you just saying it, I remember what that feels like in my body.
does it feel like death?
Yeah,
Does it feel like fire?
it's like a feeling I get in the pit of my stomach. Like, I always say we have like a sixth sense,
Hmm.
being diabetic, or like spidey senses. The way you become in tune with your body. You know when you're high, when you're low. I can tell if I ever have ketones before I even test. Again, it's just the feeling I get in my body. Like, so
Hmm.
I've been in DKA, in the beginning a couple of times, and I can still remember what that feels like. So,
It's nothing you want to ever relive, right?
no.
Look, I was just telling someone on a couple pods recordings I did ago about, I said I've never been diagnosed as being in DKA, but I know I've been in DKA. And they were like basically asking how. I said, I remember I was dating this girl and we ordered like all this food one night, like Chinese food and stuff. And I remember thinking I had food poisoning. And for about 2 days, I was on the floor, could not move, throwing up. I had the fruity smell on my breath, exhausted. I said my blood sugar kept reading high,
Yeah,
but I just kept on drinking water because I didn't know diabetes could kill me. I didn't. I really didn't. I really
you were
didn't.
definitely in DKA.
Yeah, I know I was in DKA. It took a lot. It took days, and I thought that I was going to die.
Well, thank God you didn't.
Right. And, when we're young, we feel as though we're strong, fit mentally, physically. We think that we can handle anything. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
just was like, oh, this isn't what death feels like. Death has to be worse than this, but that's the worst feeling I've ever felt in my life. Like, I, I don't know.
And your logic is crazy. That has to feel worse than this.
It
So
has
I'm
to
good.
like me personally, I'm like, I can't feel death, right? That's how bad death is. Like death has to be that bad where I can't feel it. Like it's like it gets so excruciating and then it's gone.
That's crazy.
Like, I don't know. Young, dumb.
Yeah, willing to risk it all.
Right, right. Have you I don't even want to go back and experience your DKA because you already mentioned that. Let's turn the topic. What are some of your passions? Things that you actually like enjoy doing and like that helps fulfill your bucket at like even on a regular day.
Um, I really do value relaxing and doing nothing, even though sometimes I feel guilty about it, but I think everybody needs that. I love going to the beach. I love beaches. I love water. Anything to do with water. Um, I like being relatively active. So again, like dance. I like things like yoga. Um, love music. Love, love, love. Big on music. Um, like watching movies. I'm fairly simple. Cooking. I like to cook. I think it's a love language for me.
Mhm.
Um,
Every everything you just mentioned, you said you like going to the beach, you like relaxing, you like watching movies, you like cooking. You know what this sounds like?
what?
Like, because I do have that in our notes about relationships and dating. So it tells me that you are um what would we consider that term, like a hopeless romantic?
Yeah, I consider myself that in a sense.
You live in New York area.
Yeah.
What beaches do you go to?
Nah.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was like, I know you're not going to Coney. Yeah.
No, it's just, when I travel,
Even though I've heard that it's gotten a lot better.
I wouldn't know.
Okay, you travel to like Jersey beaches.
Honestly, yes, I will do that. When I go to Puerto Rico, Florida, places like that, you know, you got to make sure you're always at the beach.
Right. Is that's your background, or you Puerto Rican?
Yeah,
100% Boricua.
100%.
100%. I have a lot of Puerto Rican background also. Yep, yep, yep. So knowing that you're of Puerto Rican background descent, has that affected you like with your diabetes and um people understanding because
Absolutely.
culturally um diabetes is seen different in every area. How is
I want to
how's it?
say that
Yes.
because they're very dramatic.
Mhm.
Sorry, y'all, don't hate me. But, Hispanics can be very dramatic. And again, with the lack of education, it becomes, oh my God, let's not season the food as much. Oh, you can't have this. You can't have that. Say, no, no, no. We're going to season the food out of this.
Right, right. This is in 1957. Like, come on now.
And then you get the ones that are so fixated on the home remedies, right? Oh, I think if you just incorporate more green, or if you drink baking soda with water, you won't be diabetic
I've
anymore.
never heard that one. Drink baking soda with water?
Yeah,
Oh, but they think it's going to make it like like a rock,
it's
like a
gonna like
volcano,
reverse it.
like it's going to come
Yeah.
out of you. I need to try that one because I hate diabetes with a passion.
it's it's a lot, especially with the older generation because they're still a little more. I don't want to say like timid
Mhm.
and stuck in their ways of thinking like, oh, no matter how good it looks right now, at the end of the day, that time's gonna come due to the diabetes, and it's like, no,
I mean,
honestly, but
and it's hard for the older generation to understand like how medicines have changed, how insulin has changed, and how it keeps on changing and developing for the better. How technology, they really don't understand technology. Like, okay, first they don't want to touch the computer. They don't understand their phones, whether it's a iPhone or the bot phone, Android. Yep, that one. Whether it's an
yeah,
iPhone or Android, they're like, how do I do this? Can you show me how to? Now, if you tell them like you're wearing a sensor and an insulin pump, they don't understand that at all.
Yeah.
At all. So they may think that, okay, you're wearing a sensor and an insulin pump. Basically, diabetes is gone. Like you don't have to do anything. Like it's going to handle itself. Or they'll
Yep.
or they may think, oh, she has a real bad now. She has to wear those devices.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I've definitely witnessed both those train of thoughts, and I'm like, they're both wrong.
Mhm.
I'm okay. Thanks.
Right.
Okay. Like, wow, it's so bad you have to be on the monitor. You have to always get insulin. And I'm like, when you do the injections, you still have your 24-hour and your fast acting. That's kind of honestly the only reason why I chose to get on the pump again. Not the only reason, obviously. Um, I told my doctor, I think if we could do one insulin,
Mhm.
I would probably be using the pen forever. And if I
So,
knew I didn't need like high doses, yeah, I think I would do the pen forever.
what was the issues with taking two different insulins? Was it like the timing and
Um, I think I'm just like really easily burdened by this. It sucks to say because obviously it's for life, but the 24-hour one was a really big dose, and I scar really badly. So anytime I would inject it, even if it was a new site, I would get sore really quickly or it would like bubble up a little bit. And then again, it being like a public thing, if you're out and you gotta inject yourself, sometimes I don't want to get up from the table and go to the bathroom and inject myself. For what?
right.
And oh, you're gonna have a snack, you gotta inject yourself. But I don't know, I think they're both like there's a lot of pros and cons in my mind for both.
I remember the first time, I believe I was in Virginia Beach with family, and I pulled out an insulin pen I was using at the time. We were at like a seafood restaurant on the beach, and I pull it out and I go to inject my stomach, and I remember seeing someone like look like
Yeah.
they couldn't believe I was doing that right there while they were eating, and I just went ahead and did it, and like that was the moment where like things really changed for me, maybe as far as being outwardly able to like showcase, like, or not showcase, just inject in public. Because I know today, I know it's always going to be in the back of my mind, like thinking like, because I don't like people staring at me at all. I don't like I can't stand when people are in my
Yeah.
face at all. Um, and I don't, because I'm when people like do something that offend me, I never ever like hide about. Like I'm always like look at them like basically like you looking at like you got an issue with me. I've always been like that, no matter if it was as a child, as an adult, whoever. And for someone like to look at me and like be squeamish, like I'm doing this so that I can live, so that I can better management, and that goes with like you using device technology, pumps and sensors now. It's not because you are a bad diabetic. These
Hmm.
things help me. They help me.
Yeah.
They help me live more carefree, for real.
Yeah.
And if people would have had these devices, this technology years ago, we wouldn't be talking about all the complications and amputations and things that have occurred over the years.
I think
And,
it was beautiful.
yeah, and like yourself, you mentioned like you have multiple chronic health conditions. Can you speak on any of them?
Um, yeah, so I have the microalbumin, which is the protein in the urine. Um, Thankfully, no, bad progress has ever happened. Like it's never gotten worse.
And
So it's just one for the big,
you've had that for like 13 years.
yeah. Um, I was recently diagnosed with MS. And so that, like, those two, I don't know. I noticed very early on that once you're diagnosed with diabetes, everything becomes about that. So some doctors are like, "Oh, it's because of the diabetes," and
Right.
another
Which,
doctor's like, "No, it's not. Like that's not
right.
how
You,
that
you,
works."
you can't stop. Like, there's nothing you did for MS to come about
Yep,
at all.
yep,
It's developmental with autoimmune.
yeah. Um, and then it's not like a chronic illness, but I get chronic migraines. So I actually have to get injections all over
Hmm.
to keep them at bay every 3 months. So it's like it's a lot for me to just exist.
Hmm.
Um, Medically, it's a lot for me to exist, and I think a lot of the stigma that I hate with diabetes is that where it's like one person's like, "Oh, the diabetes caused this," and blah 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 blah. It's not true. It's not. I went to urgent care. I want to say like a month ago for a cough and strep throat. And the guy's like, "What's your A1C?" I'm like 6.4.
I would have been like, it ain't got nothing to do with you.
Oh my gosh. Like he went off. He's like, "Your A1C should be below 5." And I'm like,
Below, he said below 5.
"Below 5." He's like, "Did they not tell you that?" I was like, "I've never heard that. Like literally, I have never heard that in my life. And that's not what I'm here for." So then he starts, "Oh, drink a lot of skim milk and get a lot of vitamin D."
What?
I'm just like,
I understand the vitamin D, but drink a lot of skim milk. He
mhm.
suggested that to a person with type 1 diabetes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I was just like, I'm not here for that. He's like, "Let me guess, you never heard the thing about the milk." And I was like, "No, but also I'm not here for that." He
Not
was
at
like,
all.
"Well,
Like,
that's gonna play on your immune system." I'm like, "Okay."
right.
Like,
And what about my strep?
right. I was like, "Can we like, am I good?" And he was like, "Yeah, you don't have it anymore." I said, "Great, I'm gonna go." He was like, "Google the skin milk." I was like, "I will not."
Not.
Enjoy your day.
None. I see why you like relaxing on the beach.
Yeah.
Look, and he might be on the next episode of somebody's true crime podcast. Like seriously, yeah, you just said a lot to me in like a minute or two because I don't know if you saw me like put my hand like
Yeah.
this.
Like you
And
were getting stressed.
no, I wasn't getting stressed. I was just shaking my head. Like I truly understand a lot of the things you're going through
Yeah.
because like I don't want to make this about me at all, but we know that we both live with um type 1 diabetes. Uh, I'm being evaluated for MS. I actually have a brain MRI scheduled for April the 3rd. Um, I also have chronic fatigue and chronic pain and fibromyalgia. That was diagnosed. Say that again.
But that's a lot.
I was diagnosed with that a few years ago. And another reason I'm getting the brain MRI is because I get migraines at times. Yeah. And a lot of times they come from like the back of my head, like in the ear area and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what's this coming from. Like I'll take off my do-rag thinking it's because my do-rag's too tight or the headphones and it's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
am very sorry that you're going through all.
we look, I'm not sorry for it. And but I am sorry that you're going through it because I just want to like we can have this conversation now. Like being able to sit here and have a conversation with you about these things, like it opens up I mean, living with chronic health conditions is a pain in itself. It's a huge burden, as you mentioned. But to have someone else that you could sit down and like converse with that truly empathizes with you from lived experience is second to none. It rewinds me and dates me back to when you were 14 years old And that nurse in high school, like she wasn't empathizing with you. And you mentioned that, and that really changed the trajectory for you for many years to come
Yeah.
because you didn't have that adult. But just know today you have this adult. We're family. If you ever knock on my door for anything, I'm going to be available. And I'm hopefully you're available for me also,
Of course.
because this is a community that needs to be that we need.
Yeah.
It's almost like if you grew up and you got a group of people like all these little girls want to be dancers growing up, all these little boys want to be football players, all these little boys want to be basketball players, so and so, all these kids are in the choir or they're whatever. This is what we have as we've grown into adults. We do have these chronic health conditions, and we can help better each other physically and mentally by just having these conversations, being there for each other, meeting up. So the next time I am in New York, make yourself available. Okay. Um, tell I got all these jobs down. She got more keys than a janitor. Look, be authentically us, because I mean it's needed. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to join with community at all. Have you? You
No.
haven't. You haven't. And I just started 2021 was really the first time I ever even spoke to another type 1 diabetic. Like really, I mean, I spoke to some people like via like social media, Instagram and stuff, but like in person, I remember the first person I met with type 1 diabetes. It was a guy named Doug, and this was at a JDRF event in Westchester, Pennsylvania. And I'm still cool with Doug today. Like he texts me and message me, um, and that means a lot to have that community, to have that person beside you that you can actually have that communication with. That it's all like normal. Like I'm not hiding giving injections. I'm not hiding my sites. If I want to talk about my sites, if I want to talk about a day filled with burnout, a day filled with chronic pain, chronic fatigue, me having to get these scans done or whatever, like I have Doug, I have you, I have a whole community of people, and it helps us really.
It really does. I still, I don't have diabetic people. Like, again, I have, now I have the online community.
Hmm.
But as far as in person, it's still just me.
Right. Especially in your area, someone up for like even like your background, like seriously, you don't want to meet little white Susan that has diabetes. For real. You don't want that to be the first person, and you sitting down and you're like, Susan's talking about the ponies, bro, growing up. Like, nah, dog. Like I was in the streets. Like for real. Like I was managing this from day one. No one else managed this but me. This is mine. This is my diabetes. It belongs to me. Like people don't truly emphasize with that. Like for real. Like this is so it is best that you meet or have a relationship with someone who looks like you, someone who's been through the trials and tribulations that you've been through, the ways of life that you've been through. Serious. Now, I do want to ask, how has living with these other chronic health conditions affected you on top of living with diabetes?
Remember the movie Chicken Little? The
I,
sky is falling. The sky is falling.
everything, and you're trying to
That's kind of
dodge
how
it all.
it is. That's like how I feel 24/7.
You're trying to dodge it all, right? Do you feel as though like it's not the end, like something else is going to come?
Unfortunately, yes. And I speak with my doctor about this all the time. I'm like, honestly, I'm just waiting for like that last blow where give me like my updated time. And she's like, no, I think that's just like PTSD. And I'm like, yes, I know I have it.
Right.
And for good reason. But I'm basically like always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Mhm.
But everything is actually okay. You know, it's just the anxiety of it.
Mhm. I've been speaking with people regarding managing multiple chronic health conditions and how it affects us mentally and physically, and how there needs to be more open like government subsidies to help people just live normally that like benefits like whether it's like social security, disability, income, like it's a need for real for people that are managing multiple chronic health conditions. And it's more than just I can't lift 20 pounds or I can't stand for the 20 minutes or so.
Mhm.
It's a huge brain fog that clouds us, and the anxiety. I don't care if you're living your best life with diabetes. Like I've been living with a A1C under 5.6 for the last 6 years. But still mentally there's this dark cloud that hovers over me, and I'm like I don't fear. I've never been one who like in fear mongering or have actually physically like feared anything truly. But I'll also think about like if I'm not here in the presence, how is that going to affect my family? How is that going to affect the people that I love the most? How am I going to go without my full story being told, my legacy being implanted here in this world on this earth? And just knowing that you too are managing multiple chronic health conditions and how much time it takes away from you just being able to just breathe and just live. Um, we do need to set up a time and a place, like a day to like meet up, and where we just like, okay, we can meet somewhere in the middle, somewhere in between, wherever, and just to enjoy life, like seriously, because that's something that I mean, we may see it on social media where people are like, diabetes doesn't affect me, blah, blah, blah. But we
Yeah.
know, we know. I've had many of these conversations. Diabetes affects us. And on top of that, managing other chronic health conditions
Hmm.
and other chronic health conditions. And just think about, like, I mean, how it does affect us emotionally. Like, I have a note from you where you wanted to speak about things such as dating. This has to affect you dating. Not
Absolutely.
I mean you're like you said, you're shy woman. Um, you're not used to like putting yourself out there, like and welcoming anyone to basically be in your space.
Yeah.
But now you have these conditions that you live with. That's another barrier into dating and building relationships because it's even hard, like building like friendships. Now, when you talk about relationships, like significant others, like I know, like the first time I like met someone, like I was dating, like after a while, I was like, the first thing I'm going to say is I have type 1 diabetes and get it out the way, like get it out the
Yeah.
way. Like I
Yeah.
have to get it out the way, like seriously. And hope and thankfully that they were okay with that. Like they were like, because that turned into a 2 hour conversation that turned into like years later, like seriously. And how does have you been able to hold relationships and date?
Um, no, I mean, I've never been big on dating,
Hmm.
so that's normal for me. But
Oh,
I
because they
also,
told you when you were 14 you weren't going to be able to.
that's what I was gonna
Look,
say.
it's horrible, man.
um,
Damn that doctor and nurse.
so I think that like it's that, like literally that line. I think I was very young, so it kind of like put a lot into play for me. Um, but then just the diagnosis itself and who I am as a person, right? Like I've always been shy, so going out there and being like, "Hey, this is me," like that, I'm very weary of that. But then I feel like having to explain that, right? Like the being type 1, and like you said, the first thing I'm gonna say is, "Oh, I'm type 1 diabetic." Like I just feel like that's so much. So sometimes, yeah, I don't bother. And then, we were talking about the diabetic porn star, and that's why I was like, you know what? I fuck with that. I love that actually, because you want to know that even though you're wearing these things, someone's still attracted to you. Someone
Right.
still thinks, they're gonna lay you down, and
Uh-huh.
you're going to Pound Town, like,
Right. Right.
um. So for me, I just feel like, it's probably gonna be like unnecessarily hard because if I've already dealt with like the low self esteem, now I'm like, oh, I gotta take off my clothes and I got these devices on, and
Mhm.
like, so I just, if somebody comes, somebody comes. If not, I'm just like, I'm cool alone.
Right. And that dates back to that whole assembly they didn't have when you came back before you came back to school. If those
Yeah,
kids would have known and they was growing up knowing that people are going to have diabetes, people need these devices to just be the best versions of themselves. Like we wouldn't have to worry about this conversation about laying down and going to Pound Town with devices and worrying about the insecurities that do exist because you don't want to have to take off these devices because you're like, dang,
I've done that.
I just put this sensor on. I don't know when I'm going to get another one.
I've done that.
I just put on this pod. Now when I'm done, my blood sugar is going to be 500. Like,
I've done that with the mini med. I, like disconnected a couple of times, and I was like, okay, we'll be fine. And then when we were done, I just like reconnected, and I was like, come high. And I was like,
look,
well, what'd you expect? I took it out,
look, and you can't even remember what happened because the roller coasters of the blood sugar. Look, people don't. These conversations are not had. Like seriously, they need to be had
Yeah,
because, I mean, we all have lived through these. If you're an adult today living with diabetes, living with any chronic health condition, you've also dealt with an insecurity. You haven't always been like, diabetes is mine and I'm strong and I'm going to take control and blah, 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 blah. Leave that at the door for real.
yeah,
Don't bring that to me. Show me the realities.
yeah,
As you say, that's something that I always get from you. And every time that I've reached out to you, you always say that there's certain things that people do not say.
yeah. I mean, like, I hate to be the one that's always like, oh, it's been more like negative, but like for me, yeah, that has been my experience.
Mhm.
Like I have the people who make those comments. I have, like I already had those self-esteem issues to then where the devices or like my scarring, whether it's from the injections or the pumps, which is a whole different thing that
Mhm.
insurance doesn't cover, which I hate. They don't cover any kind of scar therapy. And I feel like we should get on that because how do you not cover scar therapy? But yeah, I think a lot of times, especially now that things are trying to be normalized, right? I think everyone wants to put on that brave face and be like, there's no need for sympathy and pity. Like, I'm great and I'm this. And it's like, okay, but were you always like that? Are we going
Mhm.
to sit here and say that just because times are starting to change, this person who was just diagnosed last week should just jump right in and have no fear, no anxiety, and they don't have a space to talk to anyone about anything with because they're just supposed to be happy? No,
Right.
it doesn't go like that.
Look, and
I'm
when
sorry. In my opinion, it
nah,
does.
when you open up your club and you have that room in the back It's going to be we know that it's therapeutic, right?
Yeah.
It's therapeutic. We'll have someone that's informed in trauma therapy, people living with chronic health conditions who can sit them down and talk to them gently while they're talking about their diabetic.
I need her. I need her to
Look,
come and teach a class or two.
right. What kind of class?
Whatever she's willing to teach and whatever people are willing to learn.
Look, in something like we've been talking for about an hour and a half, and I told you from the beginning, like most people, like I can't talk for 5 minutes or so, and I told you that's on me to be able to have that and keep that conversation going. Like this is our first conversation, but in this hour and a half, you gifted the community so much knowledge and from your lived experience that they need to know, because you started off by stating like basically like these are things that I don't hear people talk about, and you've covered all of that. So you are the people. You are the people. You are that person that was needed in this space to help open the doors for other young adults, young kids, teenagers that are diagnosed to be able to come out and be who they are. Because, like I said, over this hour and a half, there's nothing that you didn't cover that will be able to benefit other people, not only people living with chronic health conditions, but just people who want to be the best at what they do, whether that's the best with their peers in school, the best in college, the best in their educational experience, the best with their family, the best with their medical teams, just best in advocating for things such as normalizing wearing sensors, wearing insulin pumps, normalizing speaking to family about it. You may have came into this setting thinking or stating that you were shy about it, but today you just gifted a whole community the reasons why, not only that you're able to be your best that you are today, but the reason why that they too can be the best person that they are tomorrow. I had someone reach out to me last year, and they were talking about they weren't able to access insulin and things, and then we got to talking about like continuous glucose monitors and insulin pumps, and they were like they would never wear them because they had sensory issues. And we held this was a young lady, she's probably like 18, 19 at the time, and after having a conversation with her, now when you see her across social media, you know what she's doing? She's wearing the insulin pumps.
Yeah.
She's wearing the CGMs, and she's smiling about it, and she's loving it. She's like, this is what keeps me alive. This hour and a half conversation that I've just had with you is something that's going to keep someone alive. And you may have not known that before, but I mean, you are a true blessing to this space, to this world. None of these chronic health conditions that you have are going to hold you back and hold you down, because you still have goals and dreams that you want to reach and that you want to seek. And we just got to make sure like the measurable steps are put in place so that you can reach them. Yes, I'm going to have to carry my diabetes with me. Yes, I'm going to have to schedule all these doctor's appointments. Yes, the pharmacy is going to mess up, and my mom's going to have to John Q them. But I'm still going to be able to enjoy time on the beach. I'm still going to be able to read. I'm still going to be able to watch my crime scene shows. I'm still going to be in the kitchen cooking. and being the best version of myself.
It took a long time, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope that this conversation that we are having has helped you um or benefited you so that today I don't even expect change for myself today, but tomorrow you walk out into the world and you just see people and the light shines.
It's like I'm gonna go cry in the shower about it a little later, but in a great way, in a very great way. And I'm very thankful for that and for what you do.
Um, the conversations I have are organic, like seriously. I started off this conversation. I wrote your name. I told you in the middle of my sheet of paper. I hope that you can see this now.
Yeah, I can see.
Get me
Oh,
back
now
on the
I can.
camera. There we go.
Yeah.
But that's not.
Oh, double sided. Okay.
Yes, yes. So you started off as Amanda, but you filled my bucket today. Serious, and I appreciate you. Um, as we do wrap up this conversation, there's always two things that I ask people. First one, today, if magically the Dia gods, the Dia fairies came down into this space and cleared the world of diabetes, like it's gone, vamoose, like it's not coming back, no matter what. We don't even question how it got here. We just know it's eradicated. It's gone. Like you wake up, you don't have to do anything, check your blood sugars, give insulin, nothing at all. You're just able to just be you. Be you, even though diabetes has altered who we are over the time. So it's going to always be in the back of our mind. But on that day that the cure is here, and that cure means that it's gone, not meaning you have to wear some kind of patch that gives you islet cells that regenerate or whatever, and you have to take immunosuppressive drugs forever. That cure is here. If it's here, what do you do?
You know what's crazy? I feel like I don't know what I would do. I really do think that it has become such a big part of me. To an extent, I feel like I almost wouldn't notice it's gone, right? Because even with the devices, unless I'm touching them, I kind of don't feel them, right? So sometimes I do forget that I'm diabetic because even though I'm wearing the device, it's not like something that I'm constantly feeling. Um, but I really do think I would always carry it with me, not the devices, but like mentally what it's done. You know, the way you said it's changed us. I think I I don't know. I don't know what I will do. I think I'd just go on living my normal life. You know, I do believe though that a part of me would be more inclined to put myself out there. You know, like I might go and go be the stripper that I wanted to be before, you know, like I
She
don't
push
know. Like I might be the that
look,
second or whatever.
right.
But um I will say I don't know that it would be extremely different
Mhm.
because a lot of it also just stems from who I am. Like I've always been that shy person who doesn't always like all of that attention. But I do think I definitely would be more inclined to put myself out there, wear certain things because I do cover up a lot. Um, yeah, I think those are like the things that would change, and a lot of my anxiety would subside, although a lot of my anxiety comes from the other chronic illnesses because of diabetes. I think we've learned that, like, yes, no matter how on top of it you have, it is autoimmune. So you can be on top of it as much as you want to be, and you are still going to have bad days. But I also don't think that it's uncontrollable and, you know, all the horror stories are accurate. You're not going to just develop another condition just because you're diabetic. So a lot of my anxiety doesn't come from that. It comes from everything else that I have. Um, that being said, it would help my anxiety levels, but I think I do still live a pretty normal life.
Right. Because diabetes is just a part of you.
Yeah.
Um, I feel you. You stated that you wouldn't change too much because, I mean, if diabetes is gone, you would have to naturally like change with it, right?
Hmm.
Even before the physical, it's the whole mental aspect. Like, how do you change who you are?
Yeah.
It's almost like being incarcerated for 15 going on. You're going on your 16th year living with diabetes, correct?
Yeah.
Um, being incarcerated for 16 years. How do you escape that? Because we know when people are incarcerated, when they come out, they're not given the resources that they need to just be welcomed back into society and become productive members of society. So we know that upon diagnosis, we weren't given the therapeutic measures to be at our best. So if the cure or if the cure is here and it's fully eradicated, there's going to be a need be for a lot of therapeutic measures. A lot. And how that will go about, I don't know. Even the research companies that are today searching for cures and doing the things that they can, are they too thinking about that? It makes me question. And I've never even thought about that until having this conversation with you. Because most people, they're like, I'm going to buy this big burger, this big ice cream cone. They think about all the money that they're going to be saving, taking trips, all of those things. But you just like shared with me something that I hadn't even thought about. Like how, or like basically how I can't change much who I am because diabetes has been so much a part of me. How can we alter that? Like how? Like that's a big question. I'm going to keep it here. So the next conversation I have when someone actually talks about them saving the money and doing all those other things without diabetes, I'm going to be like, what about the how and the therapeutic measures? Because the food and stuff is just a physical thing.
Yeah. Like
Taking
I imagine we'd all feel very free, right? Freer
Mhm.
than we've been able to feel for however long we've been dealing with it. And whew, wow, do I wish for that. But then there's the mental prison aspect, right?
Mhm.
And our bodies do keep score. Just the same way I told you, I can physically remember what DKA feels like. I can still remember that. So what happens then?
What does happen? And that's, I feel as though you're the host now because you just helped.
No.
No, because you just helped in a great transition. You know, when we talk about diabetes and like here in this conversation, we talked about more so us as the person and we added in the chronic health conditions, but it was more so getting to know you, who you are. And side note, any guys out there that's looking to date and Amanda is available, there's this podcast hosted
Oh
by
my God.
Will where Amanda truly just lets you know who she is as a person. And if you can't handle that, then I don't know. You're not the right person for her. But if you can handle it,
Exactly.
if you can handle it, first reach out to me so I can check to make sure that you're legit. Like
Right.
right. But yeah, the transition that you just gave me because you're talking about DKA, we talked about everything. But one thing we didn't talk about that I love speaking to people about, and it usually is the start of conversations about with people living with type 1 diabetes. But I always end on this note because I don't want this traumatic experience to overpower our conversation. So I want to know, do you remember when you were diagnosed?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It was a very traumatic experience. Um, Again, mom, right? Like I had an appointment a week before I was diagnosed, or 2 weeks before I was diagnosed. I had a primary appointment. She's telling the doctor, I don't know. She's lost a lot of weight. She's always thirsty. No amount of, like this is gonna be funny, but no amount of chapstick she puts on like helps hydrates her lips. Um, she's been like sweating a lot, just all of the symptoms. Now she doesn't know what the symptoms are from or what the diagnosis, the umbrella term would be, but she's just letting the doctor know all of this. And the doctor's like, you worry too much. She is fine. I remember her name. Her name was Dr. Taylor, Allison Taylor. Um, so my mother requests blood work and she's like, no, she's fine. She's fine. My fingertips had started like turning purple when I would get cold. My lips, my toes, eventually like the actual palms of my hands would be purple. So they were like, she needs to see, I want to say rheumatology. So we make the appointment. They're like, oh, you have Raynaud's. Let's run some blood work. They do lupus. They do, other types of cancer. They do all of this stuff. Diabetes was one of them because my mom's like, oh, like by chance, do you know what these symptoms would be from? And so they're like, we got this. They run the blood work. It was August, so I wasn't in school. We got a phone call in the middle of the day, and they were telling her to rush me to the hospital because my blood sugar was over 500. Apparently, they had sent out a telegram that never got here. And then that was it. Everything just flipped upside down. And my primary did end up coming to see me while I was in the hospital. And my mother was like, I told you she was sick. I told you to do blood work. I told you to look at her. And you said no. And she was like, oh, had I known, had I thought it was that serious, I would have done it. We never sued or anything because, we didn't know at the time whether we could or not. But I remember my original team, one of the really great doctors, her name was Maddie. Her daughter was diabetic. I had Rebecca Crespi, which is still working in the diabetes department. I had a social worker. She was very nice, but I can't remember her name. Dr. Argawal. Yeah, they were great.
Wow.
They were great, but it was a lot.
16 years ago, and you remember all of these people by name.
Yeah. Yep. It's ingrained.
Because they were your lifesavers.
Yeah, literally.
Like literally. Have you been able over the years, have you been able to tell this story again?
No. This is my first time being like this honest about any of my experiences and B actually speaking about it. So like I'm home with family right now, and if they heard any of this, they probably gonna beat my ass off camera. You were skipping insulin injection? Yeah, I'm gonna hear it. If they heard that, they're gonna beat my ass. But yeah, this is the very first time.
Thank you for opening it up to me.
No
Seriously.
problem.
Yeah. 16 years ago, come August, you were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. 16 years ago, come August, your life changed for you, for your family, for everyone. 16 years ago, you also were given a cape, as a super warrior, as one who, when faced with trials and tribulations, that you can and you will fight through. You have the protection of, as I tell her, I mean, you got the protection of your ancestors. You got protection of the earth. You got protection of everyone who's come before you, who wasn't able to live with these chronic health conditions. They're guiding us along the way so that we can better the future for newly diagnosed people. When we are diagnosed, it's all about us. But as we live through this diagnosis, we know that it's more than us. There are parents that really can't handle a diagnosis for their children, for their young.
Yeah.
There are families that truly, and I've spoken to people, try and do everything in the alternate route to try and save this child, whether that's giving them cinnamon sticks, removing everything from the cupboards, overly exercising, like, and people that just say there's no way a kid can have diabetes. There's no way you can tell me that my kid is going to have this for the remaining of their lives. But you've been able to shine light again and tell people that even if you have this forever, even if a cure is here today, you still going to be Amanda from the block. Yeah. Thank you, Amanda, for joining me on this journey that is the Chronically Will podcast, where we hold real conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. It's been some time in the making, and I hope that everything that we were able to open up and speak about today helps you in your continued journey and continuing to be the best person that you want to be. Is there anything that we did not cover that you would like to speak on?
It's like yes and no, because I just feel like I think we could speak on this for like a straight year, right? Like diabetes is so complex. There's always a different component to elaborate on. But yeah, it's not a death sentence, right? Like you can empathize with someone, but we need to find that balance between, this happened because you're diabetic or you didn't do something, versus the, oh my God, you can't do anything. Like, let me take that lollipop off the counter. There's a life in between there, and that's where we live. And it's completely fine. It's still a happy life.
It's completely fine.
Yeah.
And it hasn't always been that way. But you're letting them know today that it's completely fine.
Yeah. And there's no push to sit here and for anyone, whether you've been diagnosed for 20 years or 20 minutes, to come out and like, oh, I'm wearing a cape and I'm fine with it. It's life altering. How can you be fine? I mean, if you genuinely are, then you are. And all the kudos in the world to you. But just be honest. I feel like the sooner these conversations happen, the sooner you can get better. Right. Still lifelong, but it helps. Community is very important.
Very important. And thank you for coming into my home, which is this place, and allowing me into this place, which is your community. I mean, we know that as long as we join together, this force that is chronic health conditions won't be as bad as it was for people in the past. Thank you again for joining me on this journey that is the Chronically Will podcast, where we hold real conversations with community that need to be heard. Amanda, keep that cape on. All right.
Thank you.